Now that we're through the housekeeping, now that we've got our little tech issues sorted out and everybody can see the right stuff, let me introduce my good buddy Kris. Kris Lindahl. I mean, gosh, what can I say about this guy? He's absolutely amazing. It's incredible to think that it's possible for a human being to do 175 real estate transactions in 1 year. But to do it by himself, that's just absolutely incredible. So, Kris has accomplished some amazing things as an agent, which is really great. Just 1 year ago, he launched a team. He joined a new franchise, and here just 1 year later, he's been added to the Hall of Fame in that franchise. So without further ado, let me introduce my good friend, Kris Lindahl. How you doing today, Kris?
Mr. Dan Stewart.
How are things, man?
Great. Is my I'm not sure if my hardware over here is okay. Is my sound okay?
You sound great to me. What do you say, people? Folks, call out in the chat. Can you hear Kris all right? Looks like people are saying yes, yes, yes. That's good.
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. So cool. Kris, it's been, what? I don't know. It feels like months since I've seen you, but it's just been a few weeks since this picture was taken.
It's amazing. I mean, I follow you on social media, and I know exactly what you're doing at all times, even when we're away from each other.
Yeah, we definitely feel connected today with social, for sure. So this picture was taken. Kris and I took a trip together. I have a client that Kris is also really good friends with up in Alaska, and we took this photo on the plane ride out to go spend some time with these folks. And that's going to become really important later on. So I want you to just keep in mind that it's very important to have a combination of work and play in your life. If you want to hit the highest levels of success, you've got to find a way to have fun all the time, even when you're working. So let's dive in, Kris. Let's talk about these 5 activities that we feel are so important. I'm going to advance the slide here. There's 5 things that I found in my career, and from our discussions you agree with, that are really important to do consistently to get you to the top. And of course, the first thing to realize is that some of these activities are actually attitudes, right? So the first attitude that I want to start with today is a little surprising. It's me first. I mean, whoever taught you me first, right? You learn in elementary school not to put yourself first. You learn to be considerate of others. And here I am holding this webinar and telling you to do something completely different. I sincerely want you to follow me on this, folks. You've got to put yourself first. And when I say that, I'm not talking about being selfish. I'm not talking about abandoning your client's needs. I'm not talking about any of those sorts of things. I'm talking about doing the work on yourself first. You're never going to sell anyone anything if you can't sell yourself first. You've absolutely got to do that. Wouldn't you agree, Kris?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, for me, I mean, it's all about self-development, and that's always been the thing that I've been focused on the most. And with our team here too, it's no different. Obviously we have our values and our vision that we go through, and so when we're running a team, when you say me first, it is me first, and everyone on my team is a reflection of me. And so that's for us. That's really important that we're all beating to the same drum and we're headed the same direction. And as most of us are connected on social media, you'll see that. And I think Dan, you'd agree with this. When you look at my business page or you look at my personal page, essentially what I post, that is me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Dan, we talked about this before. It's important that you remember who you are and you don't try to be someone you're not. And so I realize
let me jump in there for a second, Kris. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that is hugely important what you just said. Who you are matters. It makes a difference, right? We've all got an opportunity to succeed in whatever we choose to, but what we add that's specifically our own just can't be brushed aside. Don't ever sell yourself short there. Really make sure that you understand the value of your own input. Right? You just never want to put that second. So
yeah, and I think for me, the point that about 2 years into real estate, I remember copying someone else's values and vision, and I remember thinking then, like, this isn't even what I stand for. Why is this what I'm following? And I'm sure there's people that are tuned in today that have done that same thing, because that's sort of the natural progression in any business, is
Hmm.
to sort of go online and take the shortcut and say, okay, what are my values and visions, and find one that sounds good, and that's sort of what you use. And the truth is, like, I'm never going to be Dan Stewart, and Dan Stewart's never going to be Kris Lindahl, so you have to focus on me.
That's right. Absolutely. And you sent this over. I think it's really cool that you took the time to think through all these things. And I mean, I'm just going to say it. I know you. I read this and I can check off every single one of these things. This is a description of who you are.
Yeah,
So,
this took us, so between Sarah on our team, Sarah and I run the team together. Between Sarah and I, this took us about 4 months to do. I mean, it looks it looks simple because that was sort of the plan, but to actually get this on paper and get this to a point where every single room in our office has this framed, it took us 4 months.
and it's the kind of stuff that no one can do for you. If you don't know this stuff, nobody else does. You can't just say, "Oh, this is cool. Look what Kris does." I'm going to screenshot this slide and print it out and change the team name at the bottom, and I'm good to go. There's something about authenticity today. It's so rare. It's so hard to find. Everybody's got some kind of cheesy, self-involved pitch. We're all jaded consumers. And when you can be honest and open about who you are, in short, be authentic, it really resonates with people. So,
Yep, I totally agree, and I think that for in Minnesota where we are, most of the people that consumer-wise that connect to us, they know that I'm authentic. They know that I'm passionate. People that know me, they know those things. They know that I'm generous. So these are things that most people in our community, they know that about me, but these
mhm.
are also very important core values that my team also has as well.
Cool. Now, from my desk, Kris, I talk to agents, team leaders, brokerages all over the country every single day. And, sometimes I'll ask them a question. I'll say, so, tell me about the kind of clients you'd really like to serve. And the most common answer to that is anybody. And when I asked you that question, you said something different. And I thought that was really powerful. So, tell us about that, Kris.
About the what type of clients?
Well, what you said that I thought was really cool is you're not going to serve everybody.
Right.
Part of having done the work you've done to define all of these things is to defend it. You know,
Correct.
what do you do when you have a client who doesn't want you to be any of the things that you've identified here?
Yeah.
Obviously
So
they can't stay.
right. Yeah. So for us, I mean, if we have if we have a potential client that's going to be a challenge, what I've found is the best thing to do is to fire yourself before they ever hire you, because if there's already problems before you start, you can imagine that the problems are going to continue to get worse. And I can tell you that when I first started in real estate, I used to take every client, and what I found is that I focused on those two problematic clients 90% of the time, and then the great clients that loved everything we were doing, I only had 10% left for them.
Hmm.
So it's important that when you do this, you try to focus on the people that are going to appreciate everything you're doing for them, rather than focusing on someone that you're never going to be able to please. Because I can tell you right now, if you listen to your gut's never wrong. And when you go into an appointment, and if you're uneasy about the reactions and the behavior that the potential client's giving you, they're going to be the same way when they hire you.
Hmm. Yep. And then you've got to live with them for who knows how long. So
Well,
there's,
especially in the online, and the thing that's, everyone that's tuned in, that's in actually in the day-to-day real estate, the thing that's most scary about the real estate business today is we're all held hostage by online reviews.
mhm.
And so if you're going to take a client like that on, be prepared that one-star review might be coming.
Right. Well, we loved everything about your service except this one thing, 1 star.
Right. Exactly.
Not fun. So, yeah, I think the me first message here, again, I don't want this to be misconstrued at all. It's about knowing yourself. It's about knowing what you stand for and being willing to defend those things.
Yeah, I
So,
think Dan, and especially Dan. I mean, that when we're talking about the core values and the me first doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a gigantic ego and that you're conceited. It's more that you understand who you are and kind of what direction you're going, and that's sort of where these core values came
mhm.
from.
Yeah, that it makes a lot of sense to me. It does, and this also continues outside of just like your internal space and a little plaque on the wall. It should exist in all of your branding and your marketing. So, I love these shots of your Mini Coopers and your van, your moving truck back there. I think that the Kris Lindahl team brand carries that sort of messaging along with it. When just think about yourself as a consumer, right? If you're listening to this webinar, think about the brands that you really love to do business with. There's an affinity there. There's something that means something. And the way that you brand yourself, the way that's put out there needs to reflect that. So you can't have authentic branding unless you've taken the time to really go through that me first process of figuring out the big, huge why behind what's powering you to do these things. So, does that make sense, everybody? Are you getting what we're talking about? All right, I see some things in the chat. Very cool. So,
Yeah.
Bob, you get it? Gary, you do? Cool.
So, so for me, Dan, one of the things that I always try to do within our real estate business is I try to do things that others aren't doing, or they'll get a lot of attention, and others will talk about them for me. And so, what I did with the Mini Coopers, especially in Minnesota, there aren't a whole lot of Mini Coopers here. There's one dealership in the state of Minnesota, and so what I test drove a Mini Cooper for 1 week, and I wanted to see what kind of reaction I would get driving a Mini Cooper. It wasn't wrapped. It didn't say anything about Kris Lindahl. It didn't have anything on it. And everyone would turn their head and look at a Mini Cooper. And so I thought, why wouldn't we brand these? If they're turning heads already, you can imagine what they're going to do once we actually brand them.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, and what you can't see from this photo is we're actually right next to the busiest gas station in town. And so everyone that's pumping gas, they naturally look over and look at what I see when I look at these is I see sold. Like I see sold when consumers see me online, they see sold. They see, Kris sells a house every day. They see stats like that. And so the other thing we do with these too is then we have agents that when they're out on showing appointments, anyone on our team at any time can just grab the keys inside and take this on an appointment with them. And it's made a huge difference. And where we're seeing it online is we're seeing actually clients that are tagging and taking pictures of this and sharing it with their sphere. Like, look at what our real estate agents are doing.
Super cool. Super cool. So, Kris, I knew we were going to have trouble with this right from the start. We're 20 minutes in. We've covered hardly anything that I want to get to. So I'm gonna try to pick up the pace here a little bit. The next area, right? We're talking about these 5 activities and attitudes you really got to have. Confidence is huge, guys. It's absolutely huge. Kris and I spent some time together in Alaska, and we went out to a local pub with some friends, and we started shooting pool. And a little while later, the local pool sharks came in. They had like these little cases they're carrying. I remember, Kris, these 2 guys with their little cases. They're putting their own pool cues together, and they plunk down their change. They want to take over the table that we're at. We're like, oh, okay, here we go. And so Kris watches the guy play a little, and he turns to me and real quietly says, "This guy's better than me. To win, I'm going to have to get in his head." And then he put on a confidence clinic. It was absolutely astounding. Kris, you got so inside that guy's head, I've never seen anything like it before.
I think that's the only time in my entire life that I won 8 games of pool against a professional pool player.
It was insane. He said at the end, I remember he said, "I've never lost that many games of pool in a row before. I'm leaving." You like totally demoralized him.
Are you sure you don't want me to get you a drink on the way out?
So let's carry this back, right? I mean, we may all find ourselves in a situation where maybe we feel like we're not totally prepared, or maybe, gosh, that guy's a better pool player than I am. But the people who are achieving at the highest levels, they don't let that stop them. They go, "Oh, I need to find another route." Kris didn't say, "Well, I need to go practice playing pool for 10 years and then come back and beat this guy." He totally shifted his strategy so he could win the game. And when we were doing our pre-call chat, Kris, you talked about how, a lot of times agents, particularly new agents, get asked questions that they just don't know the answers to. How do you think they should handle that?
Yeah, so and I was, at one point I was that agent, and so the one thing, it's okay to not have the answer and admit you don't have the answer, but be confident in responding to the question. So if someone asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, just tell them, say, hey, you know what, I don't know the answer to that question. I've never seen that before in real estate, but I'll get you the answer. I can tell you if you answer a question that way, you're not going to get the next question that everyone fears, which is, how long have you been in real estate? But if you go to them and you start making up things and giving them answers that aren't right, and let's say they've bought 2 or 3 or 4 houses, they're going to know you don't know what you're doing, and then they're immediately going to say, well, how long has this person been in the business? We want, especially on my team, they'd say, well, we want to talk to Kris instead. And so I gave you that one example, Dan, and I'll cover it real quick. Is we were at a restaurant last week getting lunch, and the food order got all messed up, and the server came over and she was flustered, and she goes, I'm so sorry, this is all screwed up. I'm brand new. And so when we got the tab, I just told her, I said, you know what, honestly, I would have had no idea you're brand new till you told me you were brand new. If she would have came back with confidence and said, you know what, I entered your order wrong, I'm sorry, it'll be up soon, I would have had no idea. And I said, just as a piece of advice, I think moving forward, you might not want to share that you're brand new with people. And I think that's no different than this be confident message, is that if you're out on an appointment, just know that we're always on stage, and so that when someone asks a question or they're looking for our body language when they do ask us something, just be confident. You don't have to have the right answer. You don't have to even have an answer. But as leaders, people are going to us and they want us to lead them in one of the most emotional transactions of their life. We have to be confident.
Absolutely. You can say, I don't know with confidence. There's I don't know. Or there's you know what? I don't know. I'll find out and I'll get right back to you. It's okay not to know. Just be confident about it. So, again, back to the pace here. Let's move on to this next area. Kris, I think this is something you're really leading in. It was in your values that we had up on the screen a few minutes ago. You give back very generously. I want to congratulate you for that. I want to show some of the people what you do. This is something that we used in your email campaign. I love this picture.
This picture was actually, this was my first year in real estate.
Super cool. And so from your first year, you're donating mittens to the homeless shelter based on numbers of likes on Facebook.
Yeah,
what
you don't see from this photo is I actually had to donate 4,500 pair of mittens, and that was not cheap.
4,500 mittens. That's amazing. So
I think there were 12 trash bags of brand new mittens, and I delivered them to 10 charities throughout the metro area.
That's amazing. And so obviously the goal, it's great that you're giving away mittens, but how do you see that this campaign helped you?
So this was the first one. This was the first time I'd ever done something like this, obviously being that new in real estate. And the reason I did it wasn't business first. It was because I really, truly want to make a difference in the community. And when I took this photo, you can't tell here, but I'm in a scarf, a jacket, and mittens, a hat. It was like 30 degrees below zero. And so I thought, what a great tie-in to just get mittens out to people that are probably frozen at that time of the year. And I saw the value in making a difference, and we're, and this is stuff we can talk about later, but we're so focused on making a difference in our community. We're actually going to be starting our own charity soon, and it's just to do things like this because for me, there are just so many people that are in need right now, and that's back to our core values. Like I need to make a difference, and I need to be generous, and that's my number one priority.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love that all these years later, because this is your 6th year in real estate, is that right?
I just started my 6th year in real estate.
Just started your 6th year. Okay, so here's another thing I grabbed off your Facebook page. Yeah, I talked about this a little bit in the beginning, Kris. Congratulations, man. This is no small deal. You're absolutely crushing it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, think about this. Think about what you see on most agents' Facebook pages, right? It's usually like house, 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 house. And here's an example where it's like and let me break this down for the audience, right? You've been with your current franchise, Remax, for a year. And
yep, just a little over a year.
You have been named to the Hall of Fame in a year. I mean, that's crazy. That is absolutely amazing. So you're ranked as the #1 real estate agent for Real Trends. I mean, you're just absolutely crushing it there. But you're not just here saying that. You're here also saying like and or comment on this post, and you'll be automatically entered to win 4 Legends Club tickets for the Minnesota Twins game. That's awesome that you're still carrying that same strategy through today. I love that.
Right, and that's, when you look at when you look at whatever business you're in, and you look for clues and you look for things that get people to respond, that bring us all together. And one of the things socially that, as you guys have all followed my page now, and you'll notice after the webinar you can take a deeper look at it, we tie a lot of giving back into our messages, and that's what gets people to respond. And it also feels good to make a difference like that. So, what you can't tell from these tickets are the Legends Club tickets against the Yankees are probably the hottest ticket in town when the New York Yankees come to town. And so I wanted to do something that would encourage people to engage. And that's why when you go through my Facebook page, you'll notice that we get such high engagement, and that's because we're always tying it into some sort of giveaway.
Yeah, gosh, I get asked all the time, Kris. I'm talking to agents around the country, and they say to me, what should I do on Facebook? And I tell them to go watch your page. So again, facebook.com/Kris Lindahl Real Estate. Definitely head over there. Make sure that you like that page.
Yeah, and one other thing I would say too is if you're going to follow the page, make sure you click on the Get Notifications. That way, every time we do something new, you'll get a notification on your Facebook page right away.
Yeah, absolutely right. And do the same thing at facebook.com/Happy Grasshopper, because in just a couple of minutes, you'll understand why I'm asking you to go to those pages. So let's move into the next area here, Kris. This is something I think is absolutely critical. You've got to flock together. A wise person once said that we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So, if you want to have much greater performance in your life, you got to hang out with people who are performing at a much higher level. So,
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the rooms that I want to be on are in where everyone else is smarter than I am.
Exactly. Yeah, if you're the smartest guy in the room, it's the wrong room. Definitely.
Then you're probably not that smart.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
You got to get out of that room quick.
So here's a room. You sent me this picture earlier, Kris. Tell me a little bit about the people here with you.
Yeah. So in the bottom left is Justin Haver, who's the #1 agent in Canada. Good friend of mine. He's in Calgary and Edmonton. Middle left is Sarah. You can kind of see her head over Justin, then myself. Back right is Greg Geilman with Redondo Beach. And then in the middle on the right is Gary Ashton from Nashville, who's the #1 agent in Tennessee. And then right in front of him is Deborah Beagle. And so when your message about flocking together is so important, because I can tell you that these guys right here are superstars in the real estate world. And I'm so fortunate to be able to be friends with those guys and to get ideas and pass ideas back and forth. I can tell you that it's helped my business greatly. And I think that's one thing that even that you do a good job, Dan, is you surround yourself with the people that are making a difference in real estate, which in the end I think you've invested in your product, and your product has become better because of it too. And so for me, it is like when you're all together trying to do the same thing and you have people that have already done some of the heavy lifting you've done, it creates an advantage, and it kind of expedites you, and you're allowed to jump a little faster.
Right. So for the 1,200 people who registered for this webinar today, and you're already doing something right. You should very much seek out the people who are near or far away, connect with them socially, figure out what it is they're doing, build a relationship. It's amazing how much you can learn from other smart people. Just, one of the things I most appreciate about my life right now is getting to spend time with people like you and these people on the screen. And, here's another shot from our recent trip to Alaska. We had just got off the plane at this point, Kris, and
we're 6 hours into flying, and that's the first place we go in Alaska. And I'm like, well,
here we are. Yeah. Alaska isn't really what people think it is sometimes. At least in Anchorage, this is one of the nicest restaurants I've been to for sure. And,
yep, I agree.
These are our friends. I want to introduce Bree and Ryan here a little bit too, because again, it's cross-brand, right? They're Keller Williams, you're Remax. It doesn't matter. at a certain level, the best want to be with the best. And, so keep that in mind, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan is an absolute genius when it comes to real estate. That's another guy that you'd absolutely want to follow and try to mimic. He's just an outstanding producer.
Yeah, Ryan Tollefson is a man for sure. He has got so many great ideas and he's always executing them. So when we were up there on our trip, we got to spend a lot of time. Of course, we did some fishing. I had a fish picture up earlier in the session. But we also did a lot of working. A lot of masterminding happened. And, I love that there's sort of this attitude because, folks, I've been an entrepreneur now. I've been self-employed for almost 20 years. And I absolutely love what I do. I feel privileged. I can't wait to wake up in the morning and come in and do it. And when I'm hanging out with these folks, I feel like I'm right at home because they're the same way. They love what they do. There's an energy and a passion there that is so much different than what you might get from the person down the hall, right? It's just a whole different thing. So
Yeah, even what one thing I found about that is that I mean even when we've got our laptops open and we're trying to get a little bit of work done and some of it's unrelated, we still had a blast. And that's one thing that I told Dan before the call that's been a focus for me. It's just to slow down and enjoy the ride because like you said, Dan, if it's not enjoyable and not fun, then why do it?
yeah, well, like my friend Ben Kinney said recently, I did a webinar with him about 2 weeks ago, and he said, I realized that I wanted to have enough opportunity, enough income in my life to where I didn't have to do things I didn't want to do anymore. And, the reality is Ben is one of the hardest working people I know. He's not a guy who ever slows down or stops, but he's doing what he wants in that process. So, I felt very much that way on this trip. I loved all the work that we got done while we're still having a blast. So let's talk about what's next here. This is really important too. I just can't tell you how important it is to stay hungry. How do you do it, Kris? How do you stay hungry?
Well, I mean, stay hungry is just something that's so ingrained into the way that I live that it's not an option. Every day I need to get to the next level, whether that's a new idea, whether that's digging deeper into an idea we already had, whether that's coming together with the team, with a meeting or with a movement, a charity event. Like, I am never fully satisfied in anything we're doing. I am constantly 100% on the gas pedal. We're not stopping. I know that people on my team are falling behind, but I am going to continue to go 150 miles an hour because I am that hungry. I'm not even sure what I'm hungry for at this point. I am just hungry. And so I mean, and like I told Dan, is with I grew up playing sports and I played really competitive football and basketball. And one of the things that I used to be really super competitive when I played sports. And now I've transformed that competitiveness into sort of this hunger of where it's just, to me, it's just the way of living. And I think, Dan, you saw that really close when we were up in Alaska, where every day there was something else going on and I couldn't stop. It's just the way that I am.
Definitely. And I can so relate to what you're saying. We're all on kind of a different journey, and some of us get to a point where we're like, okay, we made it. We've got a nice house, we've got nice cars, we've got savings, we've got great schools for our kids, we're comfortable, and we sort of take the pressure off ourselves, and we just kind of plateau. And maybe for some people that's all right. If that's you, that's totally fine. But I think the people who are on the webinar today are here because they want to figure out how they can break through that plateau and get to that really special level. And to me, this is the most important thing. They've got to go ahead and decide. They've got to have a compelling reason to want so much more than they currently have. And I know for you, that has a lot to do with giving back.
It does. I mean, and that's what I said earlier. I mean, making a difference is such an important thing to me that I drive deeper and deeper and deeper because I want to make more of a difference. And one thing, back to the stay hungry point, we were just recently in San Francisco, and I was with Mark Spain, who's the #1 agent at Keller Williams. And one of the things he said is that boredom, the boredom, when you like Dan, you had mentioned, you get to a certain level and you sort of get comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That boredom can be really dangerous. And so I was fortunate enough to have a short conversation with Mark about that. And when you get that bored feeling, that's when you've got to go deeper into your business. And that's something that even every day I have to remind myself that, you know, things can be going well, but that's when you got to go deeper and you've got to really dig in deep just so you can continue to keep that growth going.
I am so curious to find out how big I can build Happy Grasshopper. You know, I'm so curious to discover how much value I can provide our clients. And I wake up every day excited about that. I can't imagine that hunger going away. So,
and the truth is, Dan, you know, with you is that, I mean, from your previous businesses, you don't have to be that hungry.
I just am, right?
Right.
I just am, and yeah, it really is something, because I have at points in my life had that comfort level where I could just stop. And, you know, I'm very grateful to have had that opportunity, because it taught me something really valuable, and that's that I never want to retire. I want to wake up excited about what I get to do that day. I don't ever want to think about what I have to do that day. I want to live my life more from a get to than a have to perspective. And I think staying hungry is a huge part of that.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, you know, one of my close friends who was a high-level executive who's now retired, can't fully be retired, still consulting 30 hours a week, 65 years old, but has to because he's still hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he hungry? I'm not sure. He's got enough money to live comfortably, but he still has more to prove, and he just can't take his foot off that gas pedal. And you're right, those people that have that energy are the ones that are the most successful because they never back off.
Yeah, they never do. Absolutely not. So, folks, I've asked you a couple of times now. I'm going to transition here a little bit, Kris. I want everybody to head over to these Facebook pages. If you haven't done it, do it right now. It's really, really important that you do. On the Happy Grasshopper page, there's a post that the top post is "We're live with Kris Lindahl." I want you to comment on those posts. I want you to tell us what you've learned so far today, what you love about what we've covered here today. I want that feedback. I want you to go ahead and put the same sort of comments on Kris's page. So what we're going to do here is pretty cool. We're going to pick 2 winners by the end of the webinar. And at the end of the webinar, one person is going to get a year of our services at Happy Grasshopper, totally free. And Kris is going to do something super cool that he's never actually done before. He's going to have a private one-on-one call with someone. And, you know, whether that means spending an hour or 2 to help you get on the right track with your business, I can't think of a better guy for you to spend that time with. So, you know, Kris, I really appreciate that you offered that to our audience today. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, for me, like, it's no different than what we're trying to do here in Minnesota, and it's just I want to make a difference, and so if I can help someone, I'd be glad to.
Want to give back, absolutely. So we've covered a lot here so far, folks. We've talked about all these different activities and attitudes you've got to have. We've talked about the me first, right? We've talked about being confident, giving generously, flocking together, and staying hungry. Well, now we're going to get into a bit more tactical content. We're going to go ahead and talk about 4 areas that you really need to master to get to the top in your business. So let's dive into these areas, Kris. The first one I want to talk about is lead gen. You know, is it possible to even have a business if you don't have lead gen?
Well, if you don't have lead generation, it's not impossible to have a business, because you can barely survive on people that you may know, but lead generation is the most important thing in our business. And so even
I love that, Kris. What you're saying is, if you want a hobby, if your hobby is real estate, right?
Well,
if you want a hobby, you don't need lead gen. But if you're building
if you want to be a dabbler, you don't need lead generation. But
exactly,
you know, for us, everything that we do, one way or another, somehow comes back to how are we going to generate more business.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's just having a conversation out at a baseball game, if that's a Facebook post, if that's a phone call, if I'm out to dinner with friends, one way or another, there's always some sort of lead generation going on, whether it's intentional or not. there's always some sort of lead generation going on. Sort of back to my point about always being on stage. We are always on stage, and people put us on stage when that we are in real estate. So if we're on stage, there's always some sort of way that we're lead generating.
Definitely. Definitely. And it's important to, you hear that a lot, right? Should I wear a name tag? Shouldn't I wear a name tag? I'm the kind of guy who I meet people everywhere I go and I like them, right? It's like I don't know a stranger for very long. And I love that so many of the people who work in real estate are kind of the same way. I know if I dropped Kris out of an airplane in a town where he knew absolutely no one, he'd make 100 friends before he hit the ground, right? So,
And, well, the part you didn't, I'd be 100 friends and there might be 10 enemies. That's just the way it works. But I'm still at 90%. I'm still an A student, so that's better than I was anyways.
Right. Awesome. So let's break down the lead gen a little bit. Let's talk about the buy side first. If you're trying to generate buyers leads, if that's your focus, I mean, there's a number of things here. And you know what? There's not a single thing on this screen that you probably don't already know about. But the way that you're taking advantage of some of these things could likely be tweaked and generate much better results for you. So, Kris, I know that you're a huge believer in some of these things and others you just don't do at all, which is totally fine. When we were chatting before we started the webinar today, you said something that I thought was so powerful. And, so if we zoom past the IDX and the portals and the open houses and listings and advertising and referrals, all that stuff that you know about, and we focus on community and charity, I think you have huge amounts to offer there, Kris. I think it's just really cool.
Yep. So with the community and the charity piece, and I want to kind of separate those for a second. The community piece first is, as we're doing things locally in our community, where our office is, where I live, where I spend a lot of my time, we're building something together. It's that same message where it's real estate second. We are building something where all of the community is coming together. And the part that I mentioned to you, Dan, is that when you get a lead that was generated from community charity first, it's come list me, or I want to buy a house with you. It's like, we stand for everything you're doing. We want to use you. And it's the absolute best lead that you're ever going to get. Yeah, it's better than any of the IDXs. It's better than any of the Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, open houses. It is a really high quality lead where they believe exactly what you're doing, and you're attracting them to you based on the things you're doing in the community. And then the charity piece is where we actually get more involved with people in the community, where we just make a difference with so many charities. And we have so many friends that are on all these different boards at these charities now, where they know that if they call us, one way or another we'll be involved, whether it be time or whether it be a financial investment. One way or another, we're going to get involved because that's what we stand for. And when you do that, your name is constantly brought up in the community in regards to charity, like, oh, you got to call Kris Lindahl. He's a great guy. He'll do anything he can to make a difference with our charity. And that's truly what I do. Even though I can tell you, like even this morning when I talked to Sarah, we had another company that asked us for a donation. Are we way over budget on what we should be doing for charity? Way over budget. I mean, it's not even close. But I said we have to do it. I mean, that's just what we stand for. And so whether or not there was a number at the beginning of the year that we said we were going to cap out at, that's irrelevant at this point. It's just to know that we're making a difference. Yep.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think it's a little ironic that we're talking about charity, and that directly connects to the first thing we covered, me first. Right? I mean, the me first attitude is to understand what you're all about, and for you, giving back is huge.
Yeah, and one thing, and another thing, Dan, that we really touched on, and I feel so strongly about this, and I know that you've seen this in your life outside of real estate is to not get so dependent on one lead generation company or one company that provides some sort of service, because the challenge is if they change, if their fees change, if something changes, you no longer have a business. And so for us, my really, really number one goal when it comes to lead generation is to be diversified.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Like we talked about my friend Bill. Bill's another entrepreneur. I've known him forever. He was my best man at my wedding, as a matter of fact. and he spent years building a DSL company, providing DSL service to businesses. And he was essentially buying the bandwidth from the telco. And when the telco wanted to get into the DSL business, it just really rocked his world. It just changed his life. So yeah, super, super important to be diversified. Really critical. Now, I went ahead and I brought up the seller side here. And again, we see things that are just a knock out of the park, solid grand slam home run for some agents. And we also see some things that others won't do. I have a buddy here in the Tampa area who he was in real estate for 90 days. He ended up with 11 listings from door knocking. I mean, are you willing to go knock on doors in the snow, Kris?
Nope, no way.
Absolutely
I can
not.
tell you right now, I can tell you right now that I'm not knocking on a door and
Yeah.
I'm not calling an expired or canceled or for sale by owner. That's just not me, and that's sort of back.
Yeah.
You keep
Well,
going back to it, but I mean, it's me first, right? It's understanding who we are, and I can tell you, like, from my values and everything else, that's not what I want. I'm not saying that doesn't work for someone else, because I've heard a lot of people that absolutely kill it with it.
this is why positioning is so important, Kris. You've worked
Right.
hard to build a brand, right? So people build that affinity with you before they ever reach out to you for the first time. They're already pre-sold. That's marketing's highest job, right? To pre-sell the opportunity.
I think there's two ways. I mean, one is, you're a real estate agent and you're in the real estate industry, and the second one is you're running a business, right? And so when you're running a business, the highest quality lead you can get is the inbound seller.
Mm-hmm.
Not when you're reaching out to them, because when you're reaching out to them, you're giving them some sort of bait and switch on the script of why, you've got a buyer for their house, or you're going to buy it personally and you just need to get in the door. And hopefully when they let you in the door, you talk them into, well, we're not interested anymore, but we still want to sign you up for a listing contract, and here's what we're going to do. And for me, with what our values are, I'm not interested in running my business that way. Not to say that it's not a great lead source, because for a lot of people it is. I just choose to focus on more of that community side of things, where people are calling saying, Kris is a great guy, we absolutely have to use him. So it's just two different approaches, and I think when you initially start in real estate, the type of lead that you generate, you're going to be more of an outbound, you're calling them, you're reaching out to them, and as you transition into more of this business, then you're going to have people that are going to start calling you. And that's, one thing with the whole team structure is, and I know we're talking for forever here. We've only got 10 minutes left, but if someone makes a decision to start a real estate team, make sure that you have a personal brand to support it. If you don't have a personal brand, you're not going to be successful at running a real estate team. So
and let's put this in the right perspective.
Yes.
Year one in the business, you can't afford to do so many of the things that you do today. And that's
Correct.
okay. You need to spend that time really focusing on your sales skills, on your lead generation skills. It's a progression, right? You've got to build on these things. And
I shared something with you when I first started in the business. I mean, I tried different postcards and different door hangers every single day, and at the time we didn't have enough money to pay a professional printer to print all these things out. So I would go into our real estate office at 7 o'clock at night. We had 4 printers, and I would absolutely max every single one of them out until they were completely dry on ink. Every one of them. And then I'd leave, and the next morning they come in and they go, all of our ink's gone. Sorry, I printed a few things. and that's how I delivered my message to everyone in the area, was through printing at my real estate office, because I could not go to the local printer and spend $4,000 to print postcards and door hangers. And so you're right, Dan, there are different levels of where you're at in your business. And so even if you don't have the money to do some of these lead generation things here, you still have time.
yes.
And if you have time, you can pretty much do anything you want.
Well, that digs into some of the concepts I'm wanting to cover here, Kris. And I'm just stunned here. We've got 8 minutes left, and we have a ton of questions that are filling up here that I'd really like to get answered. But I've got probably, we could do a whole nother webinar.
We sort of knew this was going to happen when we started talking.
Yeah, that'll do that. So let's do that, Kris. Let's get our heads together and grab another time on the calendar, and we'll generate content just specifically to these 4 areas, and we'll really focus on teaching that stuff. And I'm going to just go through here. We're intending to cover lots of lead conversion stuff. We want to talk about leverage. Absolutely critical that you're leveraging not just technology but also people. And then of course. I'm kind of going quick over this, Kris. We're not going to dive here too deep because we are getting close to being out of time, and there's some really, really big things that I want to make sure we get time to do. So we're going to hold another session, and we will cover all of this. So if you're on the call today and you want to know about lead generation, lead conversion, leverage, and recruitment, Kris and I are going to do another session. We'll dive really deep on those topics. Now, I've had everybody jump over to Facebook pages here. I want to make sure that we cover this because there's something that's so important. We can talk about techniques and strategies and activities all day long. We can do that. But unless you're taking action, you're never going to get there, right? So there's a massive secret that kind of separates the best from everybody else. And depending on your personality, it may seem like it's really hard at first because it isn't easy, and then all of a sudden it is. It just becomes second nature. It becomes a habit. And what that is when you're doing it consistently is something that makes a huge difference in all areas of your life, not just in your sales ability, but every single dimension of your life gets better when you're focused on that. And that thing is taking action. So
yeah, Dan, I've got something on the taking action that I think is, and you've seen this from several entrepreneurs, real estate agents that you've had the opportunity to be around, and especially saw it when I was in Alaska, is that everything that I do, as long as it makes sense, I take action immediately. Boom. And I have a plan to execute that within seconds. Like it's in action. A lot of the things that I came up with, and some of them were suggestions that you gave me, those were all done before we even got on the plane to head back to Minnesota. And so, it brings me back to the time when we first met, and we started talking about your business and what you did, and I said, this is an absolute brilliant idea. I mean, especially from the charity, the community side of things that I do, it's another way to stay in front of my people. And so I know this isn't a sales call, and we didn't intend to bring any of this up, but I mean, when we first met and you told me about Happy Grasshopper, I signed up immediately because that's just how I am, and I just took action, and ever since then it's been great.
Awesome. Well, I thank you for that. I appreciate it. If there are people who want to use our stuff, that's fantastic. I'd love to help them. So a couple more things here. This is really important. Then we're going to dive into the question and answer section. So I want everybody who's on the call to do a couple of things for me right away. I want you to go to happygrasshopper.com/Kris. I want you to go there and schedule a free strategy call with me or a member of my staff so we can help you. And if you haven't already, I know many of you have, I want you to take our assessment. So that option is up there on the page as well. So go there, do those 2 things, and in just a moment, we're going to be announcing who the winners are of our giveaway. So, Kris, I've got just a ton of questions that are here in the chat, and I want to start asking these to you now. So one question I've seen multiple people ask is, do you have a coach?
I do. Yep.
And how valuable do you think coaching's been for you?
So the first 5 years I was in real estate, I never had a coach. And for me, and some of you on the call can probably tell from my energy, is that it's, like I said, it's 150 miles an hour. And so for me, the important thing with a coach that I wanted was I wanted the backstage stuff. I wanted someone that was going to support Sarah in building out different systems in the back end, so that we could have everything going in the same direction at the same speed that I'm going at. And I know that Dan and I had talked about, we're doing some integrations with custom CRM for that reason, so that everything is in one spot and it runs like a business. When I was an individual agent, we could handle it on our own. Now, as we're running a business, we have to be way more organized. And so for me, the most important thing with a coach was obviously that backstage stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's important. I've seen the same thing here at HG because I've really invested in personal coaching and training. And, you get to a point where there are 2 or 3 people in the company and all of a sudden there are 20. You have to make sure that resonates through the organization. And speaking of organizations, one of the questions from earlier, people wanted to know whether you're using a business page or a personal page on Facebook. And of course, I know that you're using both, right? It's important to have that segmentation.
Yeah, just a quick tip on that is you have to be really careful with your personal page before. What will happen is if it's all business, like here's my new listing, here's this, I'm a big deal, you're going to start to lose people that are following you, and they're also going to click the little icon in the right corner and say, do not follow Kris or do not give me notifications when Kris posts. So
Yeah.
I'm really careful when it comes to what I put on my personal page, and you'll never see me post anything about a new listing or anything like that. It will be more team-orientated, congratulating someone on the team or some big event that we're doing together. I do everything on my business page.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. It does. And here's a question that kind of falls in the same vein a little bit. Someone wants to know, what are your thoughts on branding yourself with your name, as you do at www.krislindahl.com, versus location or catchy name, and like,
Right.
isellminnesota.com, something like that, for example.
Right. So there's that's a really deep, long conversation where maybe we can dig deeper into that on the next webinar. But I've got krislindahl.com because a lot of people obviously know who we are, and so if they go to Google, they're going to type in Kris Lindahl and they're going to land on krislindahl.com. But then also I have some non-branded sites, and I have some really high, powerful domain names like minneapolisrealestate.com and stpaulrealestate.com, which are the 2 biggest cities in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So those are more of a big branding play on a city versus the agent name. So I think that with all the different things we're doing, at the end of the day, I think more people are going to go back to krislindahl.com because that's who they hear and who they see. But you're also going to get people that are going to search in Google, search in Yahoo and Bing, and they're going to search by a city before they know who Kris Lindahl is. And that's why I also have
you need both. You need both. Absolutely.
The short answer is you need both. You're right, Dan.
All right. Now, I probably have 50 more questions here. We're not going to have time to get to these. I want to go ahead and announce some winners. So congratulations to Suzanne Foley Green. Kris is going to be having a one-on-one consult with you. So Kris, I will forward you her information offline. She should probably also go ahead and friend you on Facebook and reach out to you there in the chat. And then here on the HG side, we're going to be working with Tiffany Ballard. So Tiffany, we have your info. We're going to reach out to you, and we're going to help you get launched with our services. So to our audience, I know we've got hundreds of people still on the call here. I really appreciate the time you spent with us today. I really super do. And Kris, I want to thank you.
No, Dan, I appreciate everything that you've done for our team, and I appreciate you being a friend and everyone that tuned in. I'm sorry that we didn't get to everything, but I can promise that next time we'll go a little bit deeper into these, and we'll maybe do less topics, and we'll just go deeper into them.
Awesome. Well, Kris, I'll reach out. We'll get that on the calendar, and we will share that with everyone who's registered. So